So I continue with the mini course about homoclinic classes. And so yesterday I introduced the definition for general diffeomorphism, and today I want to focus on surfaces. So here is a summary of what I've said yesterday. We consider compact boundaryless connected manifold and diffeomorphism, which are assumed to be at least C1 plus alpha or C2 if you want. And the homoclinic class is an invariant compact set associated to a hyperbolic periodic orbit. So if you have a hyperbolic periodic orbit O, you have transverse stable and unstable manifold at O. And if you follow them, look them globally, they may have other transverse intersection. And if you take all this transverse intersection and the closure, you get this homoclinic class. So as I said, it's an invariant compact set, and also it's transitive, so which makes a good candidate to be an invariant, to be an elementary piece for the dynamics. So remember, we like to decompose the dynamics in the spirit of Smale spectral decomposition theorem, and so there's homoclinic classes are natural candidate for that decomposition. If you consider two hyperbolic periodic orbits, you get the same homoclinic class when the hyperbolic periodic orbits are homoclinically related, meaning that their stable and unstable manifold have transverse intersection. And at last, if we consider now more general measures, ergodic measures, assuming that they are hyperbolic, then they are always supported on a homoclinic class. Okay, but the difference with the Smale spectral decomposition theorem for the uniformly hyperbolic diffeomorphism is that the homoclinic classes in general may intersect even if they do not coincide, and you may have infinitely many of them. So I will discuss now what occurs on surfaces. For that, I need a tool which is a topological entropy that I have introduced yesterday for the diffeomorphism F. Well, I need a bit more. So first, to consider entropy for invariant compact sets. So you just keep the same definition, but you restrict the map to the invariant compact set K. And so the goal now is to study the dynamics up to trashing some small set. And small here means set which does not carry rich dynamics, so whose topological entropy vanishes. And for that, in dynamics is often useful to consider invariant measures. And so for invariant probabilities, one can also define an entropy. I will precise that later. But an important property is a variational principle. So the topological entropy of a map or on an invariant compact set either can be obtained as the supremum of the entropy over all the invariant probabilities supported on that set. And so one reason why we are considering surfaces is that if you consider a measure with positive entropy, then necessarily it is hyperbolic. Why so? That's because to get positive entropy, so you need that enough orbits. The orbits should separate, and to have separation, you need that growth of the linear map, both in the future and the past. And so you need at least one positive exponent and one negative exponent. Since you're on surface, you can't have a third exponent which would vanish. So the measure has to be hyperbolic. So now let me state the result. So for that result, I will need that the diffeomorphism is smooth, C infinity. Now we're on the surface. And we consider the homoclinic classes. And so the first property that the homoclinic classes cover the dynamics, in the sense that if you consider any invariant measure ergodic with positive entropy, it has to be carried by one of these homoclinic classes. So this is just a consequence of what I said previously. The measure having positive entropy should be hyperbolic, and being hyperbolic is supported on a homoclinic class, as I recall. So what I want to discuss today are the three next properties. So a kind of disjointness. So two homoclinic classes may intersect even if the periodic orbits are not homoclinically related. But in this case, the intersection should have zero entropy. And you have a uniqueness. So if the diffeomorphism is transitive, there is at most one homoclinic class. So not exactly. You may have trivial homoclinic classes that are just periodic orbits, reduced to periodic orbits. So if you don't look at this trivial homoclinic class, you have at most one non-trivial homoclinic class. Then what about finiteness? So you may have infinitely many homoclinic classes, but if you look at those whose entropy is bounded away from zero, there are only finitely many ones. So here we are for today. And then in the following lectures, I'll discuss more about the properties of dynamics in restriction to homoclinic class, so the coding and about the equilibrium states. Okay, everything is fine for everybody? So now I will talk about the disjointness. So here is a statement. So take two periodic saddles, which are not homoclinically related, then the entropy on the intersection of the homoclinic class has to be zero. I have assumed that the diffeomorphism is C infinity. So let me explain why. In fact, there is a result for CR diffeomorphisms, which is a bit more technical. So for that, I need to introduce a quantity that measures the size of the derivative. So you may think that you take just the Lipschitz size of the diffeomorphism, both for f and f minus 1. But in fact, you want a dynamical quantity, so you may define it in this way. You have a finer quantity that I will call Blip of f. There is an inequality due to Ruel that says that, well, it's related to what I said before. To get some entropy, you need enough separation of orbit, and so you need that the tangent map to be large enough. So this quantity Blip of f is always larger or equal to the topological entropy. And for a surface diffeomorphism, you recover the same statement, provided you consider homoclinic classes whose entropies are large enough. Larger than the quantity Blip of f over R. So you see, if R is arbitrarily large, if you're C infinity, the bound here now is zero, and you don't have any assumption. This is why we have a simpler result for C infinity diffeomorphism. In fact, I don't know if this assumption is really necessary. I have no counterexample. Okay, so let's try.
Is the infinity assumption also for the other properties or just for this property?
Well, let's see for the other property. Yeah, it will appear. So how to prove the disjointness? So consider two homoclinic classes whose intersection has positive entropy. So it's an invariant compact set. The variational principle tells you there exists an ergodic measure supported on the intersection, hyperbolic ergodic measure, with positive entropy. I didn't say with positive entropy. Okay, so it's hyperbolic. And the Pearson theory associates to almost every point stable and unstable manifold. As I said, there's manifolds that are not uniform, but if you restrict to a large set, a set with a positive measure, the leaves varies continuously for C1 topology. And so if you put together all the leaves, you get not a foliation because you don't fill an open set, but what we call a lamination. So you get these two laminations that are transverse. And if you look, since we are on surface, these curves that you get will cut the manifold and define small rectangles, so small squares. Okay. So here, again, the fact that you're on surface is important. Now, remember that you're on the intersection of the homoclinic classes, so take the first homoclinic class associated to the orbit O. O has stable and unstable manifolds that are dense in the homoclinic class by definition, and then they have to enter in the small rectangles. In particular, they have to cross the leaves of these two laminations. But the same picture holds for the other class, and so for the other periodic orbits. So again, the stable and unstable manifold have to enter. And then this force the curves of the stable and unstable manifold of O to intersect the stable and unstable manifolds of O prime. So that's fine. If these intersections are transverse, you deduce that you have the homoclinic relation between O and O prime, and then the two homoclinic classes coincide. That's what you wanted. Okay, so we have to check that these intersections are transverse, or that some of these intersections are transverse. So for that, there is a tool which is that we call dynamical Sart's theorem, because it's a restatement of Sart's theorem adapted to the dynamical setting. So here is a statement. The statement itself is not dynamical. So you consider two objects, a curve that I assume to be CR, so gamma here, and a lamination by CR curves that vary continuously in CR topology. And I assume that this lamination has Lipschitz holonomy. So if you consider transverse sections and go from one to the other one following the leaves of the lamination, the map is Lipschitz. Being Lipschitz implies that you have a well-defined transverse dimension for the lamination. If you intersect and consider the Hausdorff dimension, this dimension won't depend on the transverse curve that you consider. And so now you look how the lamination intersects the curves. So you may have bad leaves, so leaves that are tangent to gamma. But if this occurs only for few set of leaves, because this set of leaves should have transverse dimension less than 1/r.
What does that mean?
Sorry?
Transverse dimension.
I've said, since you have Lipschitz holonomy, you have transverse dimension for the lamination. Yes, and if you restrict to a subset of your lamination of leaves, you also have a transverse dimension. So here, okay. So what about the usual Sart's theorem? Well, if instead to consider lamination, you have a true foliation, you can rectify this foliation by horizontal line. And then the curve gamma, you consider it as the graph of a function. And so this set T of leaves tangent to the graph correspond to the critical values of your function. And you're saying that the set of critical values has a small transverse dimension. Well, the proof, I will see if I have time at the end to talk about the proof. I will skip it for the moment. But the idea is really the same as in SART theorem. Just you have to check that, in fact, what you use in SART theorem are really their assumptions here. And then what's wonderful that these assumptions are exactly what you get in dynamics and no more. Yeah.
So your conclusion is that there must be at least one leaf that's transverse.
Yes, yeah. If you assume that the lamination has transverse dimension larger than 1/r and that gamma cut all these leaves, then you should have a transverse intersection somewhere. It's what I am saying now. It's okay with this statement. So let me now come back to the proof. So in fact, we consider CR diffeomorphism. Having a CR diffeomorphism tells you in Pearson theory, in fact, that the laminations are with CR leaves that vary continuously for the CR topology, exactly what we need. Well, I have changed just a bit the setting, maybe to simplify, I don't know. So here, to simplify, instead to consider lamination associated to a measure, consider a hyperbolic set uniform with a stable and unstable lamination is the same, and assume that the first orbit O belongs to K. And you have another periodic orbit O prime whose stable and unstable manifold cross the stable and unstable lamination of K. And you want to check that you have transverse intersection somewhere, so that O and O prime are homoclinically related. Okay, so the assumption is that, if you remember, in the statement for CR diffeomorphism, I have assumed that the entropy is large enough for the homoclinic classes. So here, I use it to say that the set K, the transitive hyperbolic set K associated to containing the orbit O, should have entropy larger than Blip of F over R. And then, so we get transverse intersection. So why? Okay, so let's check that the unstable manifold of O prime intersect transversally some stable leaf of the stable leaf of O, the stable manifold of O. So the unstable manifold is a CR curve because we have a CR diffeomorphism. As I said, the lamination has CR leaf continuous in the CR topology. So we are in the setting to apply SART theorem. Also, yeah, on surfaces, the laminations have Lipschitz holonomies. So it's exactly what we need. So at last, since we will have to compute transverse dimension, so what is known is that for a hyperbolic set, so here K, if you look to all the unstable leaves together, and you intersect with K, so K inside an unstable leaf has a dimension which is bounded below by this quantity, so the topological entropy, over the log of the derivative. Okay? So it's the dimension may be small if the entropy is too small because you don't have enough return to find a large covering of K. And if you contract or expand too much, the returns will be very thin, and so again you will get small dimensions. So this is the idea behind this inequality. So now, so if you restate that, it says that the transverse dimension of the stable lamination is larger than this quantity, and by assumption it's larger than 1/r. So then it's finished. By SARD, one leaf, so you can't be, gamma can't be tangent to all the stable leaves, and so you should have one transverse intersection somewhere. Okay, so the unstable manifold of O prime intersect transversally one of the stable leaf of K. But you want the stable leaf of O, the stable manifold of O. And then for that, you say that in a hyperbolic set, the stable leaves are dense and accumulate on any other stable leaf. It's inclination lemma I mentioned yesterday. And so if you have a transverse intersection with one stable leaf, you have with any other one, and so with a stable manifold of O. And you do the same with for the other transverse intersection to check that O and O prime are homoconically related. So that finishes the proof of the disjointness. Any question? Yes. Yes. I didn't try because here, in the way I use it, I really need curves on surface. So I didn't check. Probably something remains. Yes. Okay. Well, here I use transitive hyperbolic set. Yes, initially I had a measure mu, but in fact, when you have a measure mu, you apply this Katox theorem I said initially, and you get immediately this transitive hyperbolic set that is homoconically related to the measure. So you can.
So the measure is gone.
Yeah. I skipped that. Yes. Well, with the same argument, you can prove the uniqueness I mentioned. So if you have a transitive diffeomorphism, CR, then there is at most, and if you're CR, yes, you assume that the topological entropy of the diffeomorphism is larger than always the same quantity, B lip F over R, then there is at most one homoclinic class. The proof is very similar if you assume by contradiction that you have two non-trivial classes. Okay, so both, since they are non-trivial, both of them defines two transverse laminations, and then you have a lot of small squares. But then the transitivity tells you that if you take a point in one square, it should enter in the squares of the other class. And this forces the stable and unstable manifold of the first class to enter, to visit the second class. So you get intersection and then transverse intersection using that. So O and O prime are homoclinically related, the class is the same. Okay.
So what does that give you, the fact that it's a non-trivial homoclinic? That there's a unique, I mean, what?
Well, this is maybe the content of a lecture tomorrow. Yes. For instance, for equilibrium states, you may get uniqueness.
Right, so
yeah.
you can use that to get uniqueness
Yes.
of some.
Yeah. So now let me talk about finiteness of classes. So again, now I will state the CR version. So if we fix a bound away from 0, then the number of homoclinic classes with entropy larger than this bound is finite, provided this bound is not too small, so is larger than always the same quantity, B lip F over R. In fact, for that statement, we have counterexample if you consider homoclinic classes with entropy smaller than B lip F over R. So this bound is optimal. Okay, so the proof uses different tools. So it uses a new notion related to entropy, that is the tail entropy. It uses Yomdin theory, and again, that we are on surfaces. So let me spend some time to talk about these two tools and come back to the definition of topological entropy. So as I said yesterday, to compute the topological entropy, you fix a scale epsilon, and then you compute the number of orbits of length n that you may distinguish at this scale epsilon. You find an exponential rate for the growth of this number, and then when epsilon goes to 0, the dynamics may be richer and richer at smaller scale, so this number may increase, but if you take the limit, you find a finite number, which is a topological entropy. If you have an ergodic measure, you do the same, but you restrict to set with positive measure. So this is, well, there are several ways to define this, the entropy of ergodic measure. So this version has been introduced by Katok. So you, instead to compute all orbit, the number of any set of orbit that you may distinguish, you restrict to orbit that starts from a set with a measure bounded away from 0, for instance, set with measure 1/2. Okay, and then you may want to understand what happens below the scale epsilon. So for that, you have to understand the local contribution to entropy at scale less than epsilon. So you define, so you have to look at orbit that you don't distinguish at scale epsilon, but that you may distinguish at smaller scale. So for that, you introduce the dynamical bond. So consider the point x and the point that follow x at scale epsilon. Okay. And then you repeat the definition of topological entropy, but you just consider orbits that start from that dynamical ball. So, and then you take the supremum over all dynamical ball and you get this H star. You can do the same for measures. So you have a H star for mu. And now the tail entropy is the limit when epsilon go to 0 of H star epsilon. So, yes. Here I wrote, yeah, okay, take it two-sided. It's not important. So, why do you introduce the tail entropy? That's because you want to understand, when you fix a scale, how far is the entropy from the entropy computed at scale epsilon. And so you have this inequality. So due to Misiorowicz and Newhouse, the entropy is the entropy at scale epsilon plus the entropy hidden at scale epsilon. And this allows also to show a semi-continuity for the entropy of measure. So in general, the entropy is not continuous, also not semi-continuous with respect to the measures. But you have almost a semi-continuity up to a defect that is exactly this H star. So it's very useful if you're able to bound H star. And for that, you have a very powerful theory due to Yomdin, and then which has been developed in dynamics by Newhouse and later on by Buzy, Donarovich, Burger. So for surface, before it was in any dimension, and now let me just state it in the case of surface. So if you have a CR diffeomorphism, the tail entropy is not too large. It's smaller than the bound that we have already seen, Bilip F over R. Okay. So if I summarize, for a CR diffeomorphism of surface, the entropy is not too far from the entropy at scale epsilon, provided the epsilon is small enough. So you have something bound in Bilip F over R plus something, it's not exactly what I wanted to write, but yeah. And then you also have a semi-continuity with a defect in Bilip F over R. Okay, so I want to use this tool now to prove the finiteness. So I want to show that the number of homoclinic classes larger than a quantity Bilip F over R plus something is fine. So let's assume it's not the case. So you consider sequence associated to orbits ON, so which support, by the variational principle, a measure mu n with entropy larger than the quantity that you have fixed. And we have to show that these classes are not distinct, so that among this family, two periodic orbits have to be homoclinically related. Okay, so you consider this sequence of measure mu n. Up to take a subsequence, you may assume they converge to some measure. And then the semi-continuity I have stated before tells you that the limit measure has positive entropy. So this is the meaning of the bound we have fixed. So you have a measure with positive entropy. But this measure, even if the mu n are ergodic, the limit is not necessarily ergodic, so you may always decompose it into two parts, one part with zero entropy and one part with positive entropy. And so we have to say different things for these two parts. So on the first part, since it has zero entropy, the orbits that follow this measure, there are not too many such orbits, just by definition. So if you fix a large number and look at orbits of length n, so this number, for some scale epsilon, that you may fix in advance because of what I said before, then you have a number which is sub-exponential. And for the other part, so the other part has positive entropy, so you have the stable and unstable lamination, which cuts very small squares. In fact, the measure is captured by the intersection of these curves, and so, in fact, you have a set with a huge measure, which is contained inside the small squares, so you may find finitely many small squares with large total measure from the second measure. Okay, so you have these two parts. And now consider a homoclinic class that contain a measure mu n that is close to these two parts. So as we said yesterday, homoclinic class is not necessarily topologically mixing. Maybe it has some periods. So maybe it can be decomposed into sets that are compact sets that are cyclically permuted by F. So the number is L is a period. And so there are two cases. Either some of these sets AI are large. Large here means that some AI meets several rectangles for the second measure. So if this happens, this says that, so the set AI, if you remember, they are obtained as exactly the picture you see I've drawn several times. So they are obtained by considering transverse intersection between one stable leaf and one unstable leaf. So this set is not a connected set, but is connected when you add the stable leaves or the unstable leaf of some point of O. So if A meets several rectangles, this implies that the stable curve of O have to cross the unstable lamination of nu2, and conversely, the unstable curve of O has to cross the stable lamination of nu2. And then again, you apply Sard's theorem, you get transverse intersection somewhere, so you get that ON is homoclinically related to nu2. But if this occurs for several periodic orbit ON, then they are all related to nu2, and so they are homoclinically related together. That's what you wanted to show. So now we are reduced to the case where all the set AI, when they visit nu2, they have to sit inside very small rectangles. So he said that their diameter has to be very small. So now you may decompose the typical orbit for the measure mu n. So you have a period of times where you visit the first measure, nu1, but since nu1 has zero entropy, you don't find many such orbits. You have the time where you visit nu2, but since when you visit nu2, you're in a small rectangle. Being in small rectangle tells you that the orbit can't separate. You have small diameter, I will say that. And then you may have other iterates elsewhere, but it's a small proportion. So you would like to now to understand how this contributes to entropy. Well, nothing allows you to have a large entropy because in the first case you don't have many orbits. In the last case, this is very rare. And the second case, the orbits are stick together. They can't separate at the scale that you have fixed in advance, epsilon. And so the entropy is small. The entropy of the measure mu n is small, which is a contradiction to what you have assumed at first. Okay? Any question? Well, so yes, so I had two things to say maybe. So there is a, yeah, so let's see. I can say a few words about the proof of the dynamical Sard theorem. Okay, so I recall the statement. So we have a lamination, a curve that intersects that lamination, and we want to bound the dimension of transit dimension of the set of leaves that are tangent to the curve. So for that, we will decompose the set of leaves that are tangent to gamma, depending on the way they are tangent, so depending on the contact of the tangency. So let Tk be the set of leaves with contact of order k, for k less than r. Well, the first result is to say that Tk is at most countable. Later on, I will describe the set of leaves whose contact is R or larger, and have to bound the dimension. So let's see why Tk is countable when the contact is has small order. So you have to understand if it's an infinite set, you have to understand the accumulation of this set. So here is a picture. You have gamma. I drawn it as a horizontal line, and assume you consider two leaves that are tangent with some contact k, and I fix also the constant in front of the contact, and so I have two. Since I want to understand accumulation, I consider two leaves that have similar contact, so like c times x to the k. And I assume that I have such leaves that are arbitrarily close together. So the tangency points are x1, x3, x2. And I take another point, x3, which is far from x1 and x2. And then I consider two transverse curves to the lamination. So one at x2 and one at x3. And I look how the curves intersect these two transverse sections. Well, at x2, I have, so my two curves are here. So one is at gamma, at 0, if you want. And the other one here. So this distance here, A, is precisely, so if I denote by D the distance between x1 and x2, this distance here is C times the distance to the k. Whereas here, the two intersections are what I denoted here. And so then if you look to the distance between the two intersection points, I find this quantity, okay? And then, as I said, I take x3 far from x1 and x2. So the distance between x3 and x1 and x2, I denote it as k times d, with k large. And so B has this form for K large. And then you compare with the Lipschitz holonomy. The Lipschitz holonomy would tell you that A and B are comparable up to a constant, but when K becomes large, the constant increase, and this contradicts the Lipschitz holonomy. Okay. So this says that you can't have leaves with same contact which are too close together, and you get the contability.
What did you say? How do you know that your leaves have Lipschitz holonomy?
So here it's an assumption, but in the dynamical setting, it's what we know for surface dynamics. When you have a dynamical lamination, which is one codimensional, you have Lipschitz holonomies. Well, it's a classical tool, and I don't explain it here, but yeah. It's distortion argument, which use this one-dimensional. No, large. I use that K. So this K here. No, I don't use that. I just use that it's fixed, but I know that I know that everything is CR for R larger than K. Okay, but then so since you only CR when you have a large contact of order K, you cannot use the R's derivative like that. So this is what I do now. Look to leaves with a larger contact. So let's look now to leaves that have a large contact compared to R. Okay, so here is a picture. Again, you have gamma. You look to all the leaves that are tangents here, and you take a transversal, and you want to compute the dimension of the intersection here. So to compute a dimension, you need to cover by interval. So I will first cover the intersection inside gamma by small intervals. Gamma has dimension, is a curve, so it has dimension 1. So I may find small interval AI that cover, whose total length is less than 1 by dimension 1. Okay, and then I use the covering here, and I project it by holonomy, and I find a covering here by small interval again, or GI. But then I look to the length of GI. The length of GI is II to the R. So if I replace this inequality here by the GI, I find this inequality, which exactly says that the dimension in the vertical line is less than 1 over R. Okay. So I think, well, just to show some slides, I just wanted to explain that we have a counterexample that shows that the bounds are optimal, which is surprising maybe, because this bound appears in several ways. It appears in Yomdin theory, but then you have counterexample which don't.
Which bound on the differentiability? Which bound?
Yeah, Bilip F over R.
Right.
You don't see Yomdin theory here, so it's something different, but you find the same bound. So to build example where you have infinitely many classes with entropy bounded away from 0, but not too large for CR diffeomorphism, what you do is, just to show some picture, you have a homoclinic tangency associated to a saddle fixed point, and then you have rectangles that are stretched and come back, and then you perturb to create some waves, and producing a horseshoe and a homoclinic class. You need to perturb in CR topology, and so the entropy that you can create doing that is precisely the bound we consider up to now. And this can be done at in several rectangles close together, and so this allows you to produce infinitely many disjoint homoclinic classes. Okay, so I'll stop now, and tomorrow I will talk about codings for homoclinic classes. Thank you.